Okay, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining our webinar this afternoon. We seem to have quite a full house, which is good to see. So thank you for coming along and spending your time with us this afternoon. Just to before we get really into it, just a little bit of housekeeping. First of all, hopefully you all know why you're here, and that's to explore Credit Hound and how it adds value to companies using Syspro as their ERP platform. And we've scheduled this session for an hour, but we'll try and be as efficient as possible and let you all get a little bit of time back in your afternoon if we can. But before we begin, let me briefly introduce the people that you'll be hearing from today. Firstly, I'm Andrew Longland. I'm the Managing Director of HIT Technology, and I've been leading ERP programs in manufacturing and distribution environments for many years. Prior to that, I worked within the manufacturing industry itself, where I led a number of Syspro implementations. Joining me today, we have Ross Barker from Draceer, who are the creators of Credit Hound, along with some other great solutions like Spindle. Ross is a senior partner manager at Draceer and is responsible for working with partners like HIT Technology to enable them to deliver solutions to customers. Thank you for joining today, Ross.
Thank you for the introduction, Andrew.
Okay, so for those of you that paid attention to our promotions for today's session, you'll have noticed that there was an offer of a free coffee. Now that offer kindly comes from Ross, and we'll be sending details out about that after the event, so you'll know how to get your cup of coffee that Ross will be paying for personally, I'm sure. So make sure you go large and get the extra shots of espresso in it as well. Ross would love you for that. But yeah, we will send out details of that after the session. In terms of running order for today's session, I'm going to quickly give an overview about HIT Technology, who we are, what we do, for those of you that might not know. Then I'll be handing over to Ross, who will take you through some background information on Credit Hound, and will also show you the solution in a demonstration. We'll then finish up with a Q&A session to allow you all to ask as many questions as you might have, to enable you to come away from this session with as much information as you might need. We'll use the Q&A function that exists in Teams throughout the session, so please feel free to pop your questions in there, and I'll monitor them whilst Ross talks you through the solution. And if there are questions that are best asked during the demonstration, I'll ask Ross to pause for a minute so that we can go through those. So please do ask your questions throughout. If you just pop them in the Q&A, I'll keep an eye on them and ask as and when we need to. Then any final questions that you might have towards the end, we'll come to those in the Q&A section at the end. Okay, so let's get to it. As I said, just a very brief introduction on HIT Technology, who we are and what we do. So HIT Technology is an independent UK-owned business established in 2008. And for over 17 years, we have focused exclusively on delivering and supporting Syspro in manufacturing and distribution environments. And that longevity really matters for our customers. It means we've supported customers through growth, transformation and change over many years, not just through the initial implementation. We're recognised as the longest serving independent Syspro premium solutions partner in the UK, and that status reflects both the scale of our customer base and the depth of our capability across consultancy, technical services and long-term support. A very important fact about us is that the majority of our team come from manufacturing and distribution backgrounds. Many have previously worked, like myself, within industry, including as Syspro customers themselves. This means we bring an understanding of the operational challenges involved in our customers' businesses. We talk the same language as you, and we always look for solutions to the problems that we know that you have. Our model is consultancy first. We don't lead with software features. We lead with process improvements and business outcomes, with Syspro positioned as the enabling platform. So Syspro is at the very core of our business, but we also partner with a number of other vendors and solutions and that add even more value to Syspro. Trace and Credit Hound is a great example of this, extending the capabilities of Syspro to create more efficient processes. So on that note, it's now time for me to hand over to Ross, who will explain to you what Credit Hound can do to help your business. So over to you, Ross.
Thank you very much, Andrew, and thank you everybody for attending the session. As Andrew mentioned a few minutes ago, great to see so many of you on the call. I work for Tracer and have done for 6 years now. We are a long-standing partner of Syspro, Syspro and HitTech, long before my time actually. We're actually 24 years old as a business, and like HitTech, we have quite a long-standing relationship with a number of Syspro partners within the market. A number of our solutions have been around since the beginning of our existence. Most notably, Spindle. That's the product that most customers are familiar with from a Tracer perspective. But Credit Hound is also a long-standing product. Credit Hound Professional, actually, which is about 19 years old. What we've actually done is develop a newer version of Credit Hound Cloud, which is, of course, what we're here to see this afternoon. But the reason I mention that is that we've taken a very robust product and we've effectively cherry-picked all of the best bits out of that product. Some bits that we know work particularly well, bits that we know maybe haven't been adopted as we'd have hoped, we've chosen to leave out. But of course, we're bringing a more modern feel to the product as well. So to put your mind at ease, as I say, this isn't something that we're making up as we go along. As I say, it comes from that long-standing product that we've had in place for some time, but of course, developing those features and functionalities as we go. I'll share my screen with you now, and Andrew, if you just wouldn't mind letting me know you could see my screen, that would be great.
Yeah, I can see that now.
You can, perfect. So always a good start. So Credit Hound is designed to be an extension of your credit control function, but that dedicated solution, everything housed within Credit Hound Cloud is designed to be that snapshot of information that you're likely to need throughout the working day, throughout the working week. Credit Hound is ultimately designed to strip away what is a notoriously admin-heavy process and kind of flip that on its head, because most customers will work from some kind of age receivables, age debtors report. They will filter that in some way, shape or form, and then typically work their way down that list, whether that's an Excel sheet, whether that's a printed out copy with a ruler and a highlighter. There are many different ways that teams, customers, accounts teams will process those debtors. But of course, the minute that report is printed or downloaded, it's pretty much out of date. And actually, there's only so many hours in the day. How do you get through all of those items on that particular list or on that particular report? And how do you prioritize? Because more often than not, you will go from page 1, it goes without saying, but what happens to pages 2, 3, 4 and 5 of that report? You simply don't have enough time in the day. And the irony is, of course, that those smaller transactions on pages 2, 3, 4, 5, yes, they're not worth those kind of top 5 lines of that report in terms of value, but collectively, of course, they represent quite a large portion of your debt, but you just simply don't get round to them. Credit Hound is designed through the collection paths to automate all of that initial contact process, or as much of it as you want to. So wherever those transactions sit within your collection path, within your chase cycle, Credit Hound will communicate to them. What that does mean is that rather than your credit control teams having an admin headache daily, weekly, monthly, annually of who to call, when to call, copy of this, copy of that, notes here, notes there, Credit Hound will have done all of that for your team. So effectively freeing up the time for them to do the important part of their job, of course, picking up the phone and trying to speak to those customers and investigate why those payments are late, and see then if there are any common themes or trends appearing and try and get ahead of the curve. So a much more proactive approach to credit control rather than reactive. Now, I'll come back to the dashboard in a moment, but a little bit like Andrew a moment ago, just a little bit of housekeeping before we start. I'll draw your attention to the cog in the top right-hand corner, and I won't go through the user and company settings on the call this afternoon. But actually, if I just draw your attention to the email templates, because as I say, Credit Hound Cloud has been designed with that user experience front and center. And so we've got those email templates configured in advance. And of course, you can have as many as needed here. That's not just from those chase emails, but of course, any follow-up emails as well. Now, of course, you can compose your own emails as you go, as you would expect to. But actually, if you find yourself communicating to customers in very similar ways when you've spoken to them, why not have an email template ready, which even if you were to use as a skeleton and then make a few edits as you go, you've got the bulk of that particular task done already. You'll also notice we've got the megaphone icon because we will present to you any new features and functionality within the software. So again, any releases, any new updates, you're kept abreast of those from within the solution. And then of course, any questions on that, any feedback, of course, you can go directly through to Andrew or myself. You'll notice we've got the bell icon, the notification icon, and dependent on how Credit Hound Cloud is set up, we can have those replies delivered back into Credit Hound Cloud, or they can be delivered to your email account, such as Outlook. There are a number of different customers that prefer one route over another. It's just a simple configuration piece, and of course we will go through that with you at the outset. You'll also notice that I'm currently within the UK demo company today, but you can have Credit Hound Cloud pointing at multi entities. So if you do have multiple companies, sister business A, B, and C, you can simply toggle between those different companies from here. The dashboard should hopefully make sense, but I'll whiz through these widgets very quickly for you. So those top tiles, those headline tiles, are all relating to the headline figures around your total debt. What portion of that is not due, overdue, disputed, and non-allocated. And I can actually click through to any one of those tiles and it will pull through a list of all of those invoices that make up that particular category. Once I'm in here, I can use my quick access tiles if I want to get to something quite quickly. So I might want to see all of those outstanding invoices that are in dispute, that have got a call logged against them, and that have already got a promise against them. Within 3 clicks of the mouse, again, I've got that filter applied very, very quickly. Actually, if you're looking for something more specific, though, it might be actually the customer in question. Well, FE would do it for Festival Homes. There's all of the outstanding transactions I have currently for Festival Homes. I can then perform further actions from it. I could export that information to Excel if I needed to. I can actually send an email, add notes, or put that invoice in dispute from here if I needed to as well. But very, very simple to navigate through that screen. As I say, user experience front and center. You'll also notice from the dashboard we have the Where is my money widget, same categories before and that same color coding throughout Credit Hound Cloud. Overdue, not due, disputed, non-allocated. And you might immediately be thinking there's some repetition there. But if I click through to the overdue category this time, no longer am I greeted with a list of my invoices. Now it's my customers, where I can see all of those customers that have an overdue balance here. Now, again, I can add my filters in here. So if I'm looking for somebody specifically, Festival Homes again, FE will do it and it will give me the information about Festival Homes. I can sort and filter on those columns as you would expect to do. And you see, very, very easy to bring up those customers with the greatest overdue balance at the top. But I might actually be looking for something a little bit further in terms of that detail. It might be the balances, for example. I might be looking for something that is equal to, that is greater than, credit limits, not due, disputed, non-allocated. There's a number of ways that I can search, sort, and filter in there. You'll also notice that all of my customers are currently on my collection path 1. I'll come back to that in a moment, but we could very easily maneuver or change those collection paths if and when we need to. Your mini age receivables, don't forget I said the dashboard is a little bit like a snapshot into that information you need. I can access my full age receivables list from the top ribbon, but again, this is just designed so I can keep my finger on the pulse as to what my aging buckets or periods look like. Who has my money? I often refer to it like a rogues gallery. These are your top 8 accounts in terms of outstanding debt. So the ones that you might just want to keep a slightly closer eye on, or if we do have any credit control managers on the calls, financial managers, controllers, etc., this might be the group of customers that you want to keep a slightly closer eye on. Now, again, like any screen that we've visited already, I could click through to any one of those customers from here, and of course it will pull through a full list of that customer account in its entirety, but I'll come back to that in a moment. Who has paid me in the last 7 days and we can't chase this amount are both more notification pieces than anything else. And the who has paid me in the last 7 days is particularly useful for maybe some of your credit controllers that don't have access to Syspro, that don't see those payments coming in, that don't see the accounts. And actually, if I have then been speaking to this customer for the last 2 or 3 days, I can then see that they've paid. So upon logging into Credit Hound Cloud in the morning, I know immediately that's one thing that I don't have to do today. Finally, that customer has made that payment they promised me. And we can't chase this amount. Particularly useful when you start using Credit Hound. As we often say, data is like oil. It's as good as the information that we have access to. And of course, we could have a million email addresses, but if they are invalid, Credit Hound is effectively sending emails to dud, to dead, to void inboxes. So let's keep abreast of that. Let's make sure that our data is as accurate as possible. And again, it might just be a little admin task at the beginning to make sure that our information is polished. But as we go, we can keep our finger on the pulse with that. So that is the dashboard in a nutshell. You'll notice that I'm in the UK demo company data. When you start using Credit Hound, you will too have access to the demo data. So you have that confidence that you're not breaking anything. You can have a trial of the software and sort of really get your feet under the table with it. Very, very easy to use, but we also have that initial setup built within as well. So again, just that step-by-step guide as we proceed. Any questions just before we jump into the meaty stuff, Andrew, or are you all okay to proceed?
No questions have been posted so far, so I think you're doing well.
Perfect. So I'll whiz through those next 3 tabs from the ribbon at the top, just simply because we've kind of touched on them already. And the purpose of this afternoon's call is really to show you how Credit Hound earns its money. But let's not discount the invoices, customers and receivables tab. Again, I did click through to this from the dashboard, from that overdue highlighted tab. But actually, if you're looking for a full list of your invoices, here they are. I'm currently set to all invoices. Again, simple drop downs from not due and overdue. Simple traffic light system also. Those that are in red are overdue and those that are in green are not yet due. I don't have to worry about these. They're not actually due yet. And of course, Credit Hound will be picking those invoices up once we get to my collection path in a few moments' time. As I did say previously, you can filter and sort on any of those columns if you want to. So if you're looking for a particular group of customers, if it might be by date that you're searching on, after, before, etc., you've got the various other filter options in there as well. Same with your customer tab that we went through previously. A full list of all of my customers is in here, and you can search, sort by those columns, whether that's your overdue amount, not due, credit limit disputed, etc. And again, if you need to use any additional filters in there, of course you can do. Now, when I select customers from in here, it might be these top 6 accounts here. Let's just select these top 6 customers because they look very much like a rogues gallery in terms of their overdue balance here. It's actually gone into 6 figures. Well, if you're doing some account analysis within Credit Hound, it will also update those selected totals at the bottom. So yes, you can export this information out into Excel if you do prefer to, your calculations and formulas, in that particular format. But again, if you are doing any calculations in here or some account analysis, it will update those selected totals at the bottom for you. You'll also notice that everybody's on the collection path 1. Well, actually, you might think that because of the balance, the overdue balance for these 6 customers, we might want to change their collection path, and we could have a number of collection paths here, one of which may well be a legal collection path, for example. And that actually could be that Credit Hound now communicates to those customers your next steps of your legal process, and actually highlights that the next step for us will be to place your account on stop. You can expect to receive further communications and so on and so forth, or just simply ring fence them so that they can be highlighted and escalated to a member of the business accordingly. Your age receivables, again, age debtors report, age receivables report. It's got all of the information you need in here. I'm sure you'll be sat in here for a good few minutes of each day. But again, same principle as before, add those filters, sort, search, filter if you need to. So the collection paths. This is how Credit Hound really earns its money and strips away that admin burden to give your team back that important time that they don't have at the moment. So Credit Hound is designed really on your preferences for collection. We don't push you down one route over another. Now I've got a couple of collection path examples here, as you can see. We've just released consolidated chasing, so I'll come back to that one in a moment. But you can see here I've got collection path 1, collection path 2. You can have as many as you need in here, by the way, and that could be high risk, medium risk, low risk categories of collection path. You might have a top 5 customers that you wouldn't dream of chasing until 30 days or 60 days. You know they will pay, and you simply wouldn't chase them in those early few days. Again, we can have them in a collection path separate to everybody else. But let's just have a quick look at collection path 1. Again, give that a name, give it a description if you want to, particularly if you've got a large number of collection paths. There's no harm in just giving that a description so everybody's on the same page. Now, what mode of chasing are we looking at? Is that per invoice or is that consolidated? I'll come back to consolidated in a moment. When do you want Credit Hound to chase? Well, in this case, I'll go Monday through Sunday. Why not? Let's go every day of the week. What time do you prefer Credit Hound to send those emails? And again, this might be something that you liaise with your marketing team, who know that 10:30 in the morning is the best time to engage with customers by email. Well, actually, let's drop that down to 10:30. What are those minimum or maximum amounts you want Credit Hound to chase for? Again, you might have a minimum amount. You might not want to be chasing for pence in the pound, or it might be that actually when it gets to X value, we don't want Credit Hound to simply send an email. That is specifically a call for our team. You know, anything that's over a certain value, an email in this circumstance is not good enough. We want a call. Exclude transactions with an active promise to pay. Well, if I've already spoken to Andrew, Andrew's made me a promise to pay next week, I don't really want Credit Hound chasing that invoice again, in my opinion. You know, that might be a little bit of overkill. But again, some customers prefer just to keep, the foot on the neck, as it were, until that payment is made. But again, that's personal preference. My collection path consists of these stages here. Green, that's because it's not yet due. I will send an email 7 days before the invoice is even due. And most customers we speak to, myself and Andrew, very simply don't have enough time to chase those invoices that are 30 days overdue, never mind those that aren't yet due for another 7 days. Well, actually, let's try and beat the customer to the punch here and send them that communication 5 days, 7 days, 2 days before the due date. Dear Andrew, hope you well. Friendly reminder that your invoice is due in 2 or 3 days. Hopefully that gets us away from that initial excuse that might be, I've lost the email. I didn't receive the email that slipped through the net. So let's see if we can get ahead of the curve on that one. Of course, if that invoice does become overdue, let's have Credit Hound chase that in the initial stages. You know, it might have legitimately slipped through the net. Well, let's have Credit Hound send an email 1 day overdue. And if it's still not been paid 7 days and 14, 21, and again, you might immediately be thinking, this is far too many steps. We'd like to keep that down to maybe 3 or 4 before we have Credit Hound create a task for our credit controllers, because Credit Hound has a full task and diary management element to it as well. So it's not just about automated chase emails and reminders. Actually, let's have Credit Hound go through that process. That transaction, if it's 7 days before its due date, let's have Credit Hound send an email reminder. When it's 7 days overdue, let's send an email chase. When it's 21 days overdue, let's send another email chase. If it gets to 30, well, actually, let's put a call in our credit control team's diary. So when your credit control teams come into Credit Hound in the morning, they know that all those emails have been sent, whether that's 5, 55, or 555. And I can go to my tasks and see, brilliant. Credit Hound's already chosen which calls I need to make today. I've got these 15 calls and I'll just work my way through them. And that's an example of a collection path. Your consolidated collection path is very simply grouping all of those, scooping all of those invoices up into periods rather than individual invoice dates. So you notice here, I've asked Credit Hound to send an email to those invoices that are due in 1 to 7 days before the due date. So if I've got a number of invoices, and this might work for some of you on the call where you've got frequent invoices, it's a high number of invoices for the same customer. They place a large number of orders with you. Well, you might not want to have an email every single invoice. Actually, let's scoop up all of those invoices for the last 7 days, and we'll send one email and list all of those invoice details within that. So it's just personal preference. And of course, then we could have that cooling off period as well if you wanted to. So based on the fact that I'm chasing with a period between 1 to 7 days, I'll have a cooling off period of 6 days. So my customer won't hear from me again for another 6 days. But in 6 days' time, Credit Hound is straight back on it, and actually it will scoop up the next bunch of invoices that are now overdue. Now I'll set up a collection path for you as well, just so we can see how very, very easy it is. So it's very simply add new collection path. Let's give that collection path a name. So we'll call this one Hit Tech. Give it a description if you wanted to. Are we chasing per invoice or consolidated? We'll go with per invoice initially. When would you like to chase? Well, you might say Monday through Thursday is good enough. If anybody's going to be out of the business, it might well be a Friday for those long weekends. So let's not have our emails sitting an empty inbox where it's unlikely to get read on the following Monday. As I mentioned, my marketing team might have said to me that 10:30 in the morning is a great time to engage by email. Let's go with 10:30. Is there a minimum or maximum amount? Well, I'll just go with £1. The outstanding transaction amount here is quite useful, because if that invoice, let's say, was initially £100 and you'd received a payment incorrectly, of course, of say £99.50, well, anything left on the transaction is less than £1. Again, we don't want to chase for pence in the pound, but again, that's really up to you. Exclude transactions with an active promise to pay. I will. It's just personal preference, but again, that will be the same for yourself. Let's send an email. So we'll go with, we'll just say first email for this one. And how many days do we want that to go before? Well, I'm going to say, I'll go with 7 days before the due date. Now I'll select from one of those templates we looked at the very beginning of the call. I'll go with my preemptive reminder letter. Anywhere that you see the sky blue backdrop, that's dynamic data that's pulled directly from Syspro, so it references the transaction type, dates, due dates, amounts, contact information, etc. So it's a personalized email as you would expect to see. We'll add that action. Let's send another email. So if that email wasn't actioned or wasn't actioned upon, let's go with 5 days after the due date this time. And this time we'll select from our friendly overdue email template, because again, the wording within that email will now be different. It references an overdue payment rather than one that is becoming due. Let's just add a task in here now. So we'll call this one first call, but of course you could have included a number of different fields to be able to chase against that. So it could be for chase call for customer references or names or contact information. And again, wherever you have seen the question mark icon, we do have an online support resource, which is always there to help and assist with your supporting. This time we'll go with 10 days after the due date. Okay, and you can select who that's for if you want to. We'll set it for me. Give it a description if you want to, and auto complete this task. Auto complete this task simply means that if that payment was made on, let's say, the 8th or 9th day, then that task is automatically removed from my diary. I simply don't see it. Remember, I said Credit Hound has a task and diary management element to it as well. If that's all you want to include for this particular collection path, we simply click Save. That collection path is now created within the space of 2 minutes. And that was with me obviously explaining those points. If I now choose to enable that collection path, let's just go back to our customer screen. We'll take our rogues gallery, let's say, of those top 6 customers that have got 6-figure overdue balances, and let's change their collection path. This time we'd like to change them to the newly created Hit Tech collection path, and you'll now notice they are chased, or will be chased, in a completely different way to everybody else. So very, very easy to maneuver those customers between the different collection paths dependent on their status or how they are paying over a reviewed period of time. And as I mentioned before, you can have as many collection paths as you require. You may well have noticed some pay now buttons within those reminder and chase emails that we were scheduled to send. You might very simply have here a collection path for credit card customers and non-credit card customers. Those customers that you don't want to pay via debit or credit card will not include the pay now button. Those that you're happy to, because maybe the transaction values are relatively small, typically you're happy for them to pay by debit or credit card. Your big enterprise customers that have got rather large transactions values, you possibly wouldn't want them paying by debit or credit card because of the fees associated. So you could just very simply categorize your customers in that way: credit card paying customers, non-credit card paying customers, and all of the language can be the same. It's just one goes with a pay now button, one goes without a pay now button. So very, very simple. Tasks. As I mentioned, Credit Hound has a task and diary management element to it. So you will have all of your tasks and to-do items in here. You'll see all of my tasks for today. You'll also see any uncompleted tasks. I can create new tasks as I go. You can very much work amongst that team. If it was a simple callback that you were creating, give whatever description and detail you want, select the date. You could assign that to your colleague as well. So you can very much work as a team and prompt each other that you've had a call from customer X, please give them a call back tomorrow again, or create your own more maybe proactive task, such as review some credit limits, because hopefully we've given you back that time to be a little bit more proactive in terms of your approach. You will also see what scheduled emails we have due to go out for Credit Hound, and not so many over the next couple of days, as you can see here. But as those emails are due to be sent, you would then see, obviously in advance of who you would be effectively speaking to. Promises. As we are speaking to those customers, I'm speaking to Andrew this afternoon. There's a balance of £10,000 on that account. Andrew promised to make that payment and settle that balance next week. Well, if I log that promise, I can then keep track of it, and I can keep track of it within my dedicated promise tab. Again, I can use my quick access tiles to get to those particular promises I'm looking for. And when I have them there, I can simply click on the promise reference and I've got all of the information at my fingertips. I can also see the promise status, but also the payment status. And you'll see those totals at the bottom. This becomes really useful if you are forecasting cash flow or operating to any kind of cash collection targets. And actually you might think, well, why would I need to see if a promise has been broken if it was paid? Well, of course, if you are taking a large number of promises from customers and you are forecasting cash flow or presenting these figures to potentially the board, you might want to err on the side of caution that yes, although we do have £35,000 promised to us, unfortunately, we have a few customers that have previously broken those promises. So you might want to kind of err on the side of caution slightly if that was the case. Once they become more of a trusted payer, again, you might be okay with that. But that, in a nutshell, is the collection paths, the variety of collection paths that you can have. Create them very, very simply, how it falls within the task created for your team, and then also what those promises would look like. I'll create a couple of those calls and promises in a second, but I will just pause for a breath, but also just to ask if there's any questions that have come through on any of those points at all, Andrew.
Actually, we've had a number of questions come through, and some of them are fantastic. Thank you, everybody, for putting your questions through.
Sure.
I didn't want to interrupt your flow too much as you were going there, Ross. But yeah, there's a few here. I'm just going to pick out some, and then we'll come to the others afterwards.
Sure.
So first one I want to pick up on is from Amir, who's asked, how does the system prioritize overdue accounts? And I think what's being referred to there is, if you've got 20 accounts that are overdue, how does it prioritize those, and which tell you which ones to work on first and which ones to leave till later?
I mean, effectively, that is all dealt with within the parameters of your collection path. So ultimately, dependent on where those transactions sit within your collection path, that ultimately is the trigger for an action. that action might be to have sent an email out, but actually if you're referring them here to more of a what's the priority in terms of that task, who are we calling, when are we calling them, then of course it's just simply based on that trigger. So invoices due in 5 days, that's the trigger. And if there are a number of invoices that hit that trigger on the same day, you will effectively have 5 tasks entered into your task list in your diary for that day, and I can very simply then work my way down those items. If I don't get through them because by chance there might be 50 invoices that are due on that day, and I've had 50 tasks created for me, well, that's where, again, as a credit control team, you might want to do each other a favour. I'm asking Andrew to take some of my accounts that day because I don't think I'll get through 50. Or it might be the credit control manager that says, oh, crikey, Ross has got 50 calls to make today. Andrew has only got 22. So let me reassign some of those calls. We work very much as a team. Let's try and get through them as a team rather than kind of load Ross's workload when we simply won't have enough time in the day. Of course, if you don't get round to them, again, you'll see those uncompleted tasks here. But if it's really getting towards the end of the day and I can see that I'm probably not going to get round to this particular call, well, actually, let me just open up that task and I'm just going to put that back in my diary, but I'll pop it in for tomorrow rather than for today. And again, I can tweak and change those dates accordingly. Hopefully that answers your question there.
Thanks, Ross. So the next one is from Rains, who has asked, can the platform automatically escalate overdue invoices? And forgive me if I've got this wrong, but I think what's been meant there is some sort of workflow solution to allow overdue accounts and invoices to be escalated maybe from one collection agent to another. I think please do correct me if I'm wrong and just stick a comment in the Q&A if I've understood that incorrectly, but I think that's what's being meant there, Ross.
It can be, yeah. So what you might find there, of course, is that let's take our collection path for HipTech, for example. We're happy for the email to be sent. We're happy for this email to be sent here, and we're happy for that task to be created for Ross here. Well, actually, let's create that second call in this case, because if that particular invoice ever got to, rather than 10 days overdue, let's go with 30 days overdue, for example. Well, I would like that to be a diary immediately entered into my manager's diary as opposed to mine, because actually I've had Credit Hound send them an email on 3 separate occasions. I've attempted to make that first call. It hasn't got to me. It hasn't got through. And actually, I now need to escalate that and have a second task put in the diary. But that's not for me. That kind of ultimate escalation call is specifically put into your to-do list, Andrew, rather than mine, for example. Alternatively, if you happen to notice that those customers in question, you're simply not getting a response from them, well, that's where you might have an escalation collection path. And so if you are noticing that your customers are not responding to those initial emails, they aren't answering or taking your calls, well, let's have a collection path that is high risk, legal, escalation, whatever you want to call it. And as your credit control teams notice that customer A, B, and C have entered what you consider them to be an escalation reason, let's put them into an escalation category. And then specifically, the first stage of that collection path can be task in managing director's diary, task in finance director's diary, and so on and so forth.
Perfect. Thanks, Ross. And one more that I'll ask now, and then I'll leave the other ones until we get to the end, because they're a little bit more generic. But this one's more about the product directly, so you might be able to show us something. This is from Stacey, who's asked, can customers make partial payments or payment plans through the system?
Yes, they can, and right on cue, Stacey. So thank you, because you're leading me into the next stage of the demonstration. I'll go through that, but really good question. And fortunately for myself and Andrew, the answer to that question is yes, which I'll show you now. So if I click through to a customer account, Festival Homes in this case, again, I could have clicked into any particular customer account, I'll have an overview of their account. I could see multiple contacts there if needs be. You'll also see a full activity audit history on the right hand side, and this is for all of that history, not just yours, Stacey, or mine. So if you're you deal with a number of customers, you can see that I called that customer 2 days ago. Actually, you can also see when Credit Hound sent an email as well. So if you were ever to speak to the customer and they say, well, we've never heard from you, you may wish to challenge that or push back slightly, because you can see that Credit Hound has sent an automated email from one of your collection paths on this date and time. You might immediately think, well, that's like looking for a needle in a haystack, Ross. You'd be absolutely right. So if you select one of those transactions here, it will update the activity for that transaction specifically. So you don't have to go hunting through that. Okay. So let's attempt to call or speak to this particular customer. So if I take this particular invoice here, £16,640, I can see that we've already sent an automated chase email via Credit Hound. So if I do get through to Maureen and she said she hasn't heard from us, again, I may wish to challenge or push back on that. I can add a note in here if I want to. I can pop it into dispute, but of course we're going to try and attempt to speak to the customer first and foremost. So let's attempt to do that. So let's log an activity. Now, who have I spoken to? Well, in this case, there's only Maureen Duffy in our contacts list, so it's Maureen that's going to get a call from me this afternoon. What did they say? Now, we've got a number of reasons here, and if you get any common themes or trends start to appear, then of course we can add further reasoning here. But if I just keep it simple for the purpose of the demo, and we'll just say the invoice not found, for example. Again, you could be as detailed as you need to be in those notes that you add, and this is an internal note, by the way, so don't believe he's going no further, but of course you can be as detailed as you need to be in there. Now, fortunately, because you managed to get through to Maureen, she has made you a promise to pay. Now, in answer to your question, Stacey, if you are accepting or you have agreed a payment plan, this is where we can create those promises. So if you'd agreed with Maureen that she can pay £6,640 next week with the remaining balance of £10,000 the following month, we would just simply create 2 promises here. And they would then, of course, appear in your promises list where you can keep track of them accordingly. So you'd then be able to see that she adhered to that first promise of 6,640, and then she made the remaining promise balance of 10,000 the following week or whenever you had agreed. And that might be 10 promises that actually she's made. Quite frankly, you could have come to an agreement of £1,600, per week or per month for the next 10 months. Again, that's really up to you. If you are selecting today, tomorrow, unsurprisingly, it puts it in the diary today or tomorrow. If I select next week, it will put it in the diary on this day next week. So it would be next Wednesday. But if you've agreed a specific date, of course, you can select from the calendar. Payment method is really just to give you an idea of where that payment is due to come into, because you might have different accounts based on that payment method. So if you have presented a pay now button or payment link, you might receive those monies in a different account to any backs payments or open banking, for example. So it just gives you a heads up as to where to keep an eye out for that. It was promised to me. Now, would you like to create a follow-up task as well? Well, in this example, I will, because unfortunately, my notes are a little bit brutal, but they do say I don't believe Maureen. So I want to keep close to her on this one, and I really want to kind of follow up if not paid. And again, be as detailed, however closely you manage your diary. You might want to put a time in there as well, but I'm going to keep it in for that date as well. Auto complete this task. So if Maureen surprises me and she does make that payment in advance of next Wednesday, then this task I'm creating again is automatically removed from my diary. I simply don't see it. Okay, so again, Credit Hound managing your diary accordingly. You're not going to be making calls when you don't need to. Let's preview that. So I've talked to Maureen Duffy this afternoon at Festival Homes. They said the invoice was not found. I said, I don't believe you. She'd made a promise to pay on May the 20th next week for the full balance in this example of £16,640. I expect it to be made by card, so I know which account to keep an eye on. I've also created a follow-up task, so I want to stay particularly close to this one, and that's also in the diary for May the 20th. All looks okay to me. I'll click save. Credit Hound's actually asking me if I'd like to follow up with an email. I don't have to, but I can do. And again, that will be one of those follow-up emails we went through at the very beginning of the call. I won't overkill it because I'll send another email in a moment. But of course, you could just follow up with that. And again, that paper trail would then be there for you. You see that it's immediately updated the activity log on the right-hand side. I've got a call logged. I've got a promise created. You see we've also had another couple of icons added to our activities list, and you can just hover over one of these icons. It will let me know what it is. But once you're using Credit Hound Cloud and your feet are under the table with this, you'll be able to look at that immediately and know that that's a call log icon and a promise to pay icon. So again, very, very simplistic to use. I can go to my promises tab, and of course we've just received a promise for £16,640 just here. Look, May the 13th, promised on, due in 7 days. It was promised to me by Maureen Duffy. It's currently open and it's currently unpaid. And just to show there's no smoke and mirrors, if I click on the promise reference, you see there's the notes that we added in there as well. Okay. Again, I can do further things with that particular promise. Should we have extended that date potentially, but again, I've got all the information that I need around that. Don't forget, I also created a task, a follow-up task in my case, because if that payment wasn't made, I've got my task here ready and waiting for me to follow up with Maureen if we've still not received payment by maybe lunchtime or certainly early afternoon on that one. So again, another example of Credit Hound Cloud managing my diary will certainly assisting me with it. Now, we won't always get through to a customer, obviously. Just draw your attention to an email that I sent a little bit earlier on this afternoon. This was very simply an email that I'd already sent through. You can see it's got the date and timestamps of activity from sent, processed, delivered, and clicked. In my case, we've got those pay now buttons. And again, what you might have had just in response to that question again from Stacey a moment ago, I've clicked on that pay now button and I've got the opportunity, subject to how you wish to create those payment links and the options around it, to be able to edit that payment if you give your customer the ability to do so. So whether you come to those payment plans that you asked about in terms of the promises that are sent out, the reminders about those promises, or whether you choose to send out that payment link and say you have got 30 days to pay that balance, however you chip away at that for the next 30 days, by all means, chip away at £1,000 today, 5,000 next week, and so on and so forth. But that is very much subject to configuration. If you don't want anybody to be able to edit the amount, don't worry, they don't have to. But I just thought I'd mention that. As I said, we won't always get through to a customer. It might well just be that actually we weren't able to get through to Maureen this afternoon. So let's just send an email. Again, I can select from one of my templates here. I can free type that email as you would expect. You can pull through any transaction tables, include your payment buttons if you need to, or I could use our assistant in here as well. So if I did want some help creating a final notice, I wasn't quite sure of the wording on that, then I can ask our assistant to do that for us. That might be a little bit too long for me, which is ironic because I can waffle on. So let's just shorten that, take a bit of a hint. We'll jot that down. If that all looks okay, we're great to proceed. Or it might actually be that it turns out Maureen hasn't been responding to my emails because she's actually French. So let's have that written in French so actually she can understand my communications moving forward. And again, we can send that email accordingly. So there's a number of ways for us to communicate with that customer, either by those configured collection paths, which is all automated, and let Credit Hound do that for us. Credit Hound's also managing our diaries, we've already covered off as well. But if and when we do need to communicate to those customers, we can log all of those calls and activity, log those promises to pay, potentially those payment plans that we've agreed with the customer. And if we can't get through to them, we can still obviously email them ad hoc with whatever information you want to communicate to them on. And I'm sure you'll be pleased to know from a Credit Hound Cloud point of view, that is pretty much it from me. Any other questions at all that have come through, Andrew?
Fantastic. Thanks, Ross. Let me just switch over so I can see everything. There we go. Hopefully you're now able to see the Q&A slide. So yeah, thanks for that. It's actually been really good to see Credit Hound in action there, Ross. So now is the time, as you say, to go through any other questions that our audience might have. There's a few in there already, but if you haven't already done so, please put your questions in the Q&A box, and I'll try and run through all of them. We've got about 10 minutes of this session left, so hopefully we can get through as many as possible. And there's been some really good questions there, actually. This first one I've got here from Tatiana. I love this question, actually. What are the most common mistakes companies make in credit control that this system helps to solve?
I would, from experience of speaking to customers of all shapes and size, it's actually the overlap of comms with customers. It's the repetition of speaking to those same customers, maybe on a daily or every few days, certainly weekly basis. Because I don't quite know the process that you go through, Tatiana, but many customers I speak to, their credit control process is to have some kind of age debt report. They will filter it typically with the greatest value at the top, and they will work their way down that list. What that evidently means, though, is that you're probably speaking to those top 10 lines of that report quite regularly, whereas all of your customers on pages 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, not through want of trying, you just don't have the time to call them. So what you often find is that customers are prioritizing those top accounts in terms of outstanding debt, and just simply missing the opportunity to get round to everybody else. And there's an element of repetition there, because all I'm as good as are the notes that I updated last week or yesterday or the day before. And so again, what better way to have all of that automated first and foremost, but also then logged, so you've got full visibility of everything from an audit history and touch point of view.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Ross. And great question, Tatiana. I do really appreciate that one. So the next one, a bit more of a technical one this time, I'm afraid, Ross. And I know you're not necessarily the best person to answer this, but hopefully you have a good answer. So this is from Noah, who's asked, how secure is the customer payment and the invoices data within the cloud environment?
Well, as you would expect with anything financial payments related, we've been through rigorous checks and adhered to various different legislation this side. So you're exactly right in that it goes above and beyond my level of understanding in terms of the technicalities of that. But I can assure you, we wouldn't be partnering with global payments providers such as Nuve, NomuPay, Elevon, and Stripe if we hadn't have already ticked all of those boxes. They simply wouldn't entertain it. So no, all very secure with the relevant requirements in that sense.
Yeah, makes sense. Thank you. And final one I can see at the moment from Sasha, who, bearing in mind this is a webinar related to Syspro customers, I feel a little bit to ask this, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Sasha has asked, can the solution integrate with other accounting or CRM tools besides Syspro?
Well, Syspro is the best. Let's throw that one out there.
Thank you.
And you won't get a better partner than HitTech. But yes, it does. So Credit Hound Cloud does integrate with other ERPs as well. If you've got an ERP specifically in mind, then of course by all means reach out to us. But yes, it does. It's not exclusive to Syspro. But the beauty of that really for you as a potential customer is that we haven't pigeonholed Credit Hound Cloud for one particular ERP. It works across the board with ERPs that are designed for, kind of your SME market to mid-level to enterprise. And actually, we've got customers of all shapes and size using Credit Hound Cloud. So, yeah.
Fabulous. Obviously, you wouldn't want to look at any other ERP solution, but if you had to, there you go. You have the option.
Exactly.
Awesome. Thanks, Ross. I think unless I have missed any, I don't think I have. I'm just quickly checking through. I think that is the end of the questions we have had through, which is really good timing because we are right towards the end of our slot. But if anybody does have any further questions they think of afterwards, please do get in contact with us. We'll be very happy to answer them. So just wrapping this up now, we have reached the end of the session. So I'd like to thank all of you for coming along and attending today's session, and special thanks to Ross as well for your efforts in presenting Credit Hound to everybody today. Really do appreciate that, Ross. Thank you. Hopefully we've answered all the questions, but if there is anything else you'd like to ask, as I said, just get in contact. We'd be glad to talk things through further. My contact details and general contact details for Here Technology are on screen now. There's some clever QR codes there that will take you through to LinkedIn pages and things like that you can scan from your phone straight off the screen. So yeah, just reach out to us. We'll be happy to talk. We will send out an email after this event to everyone that's attended. It will include a link that you can use to actually get a free trial of Credit Hound, so you can have a play with it before you get to the point of committing, just so you can see all the sort of features that Ross has been talking about and demonstrating and really get a feel for it. So there'll be a link for that in the email that you'll receive. We'll also be sending out the coffee vouchers that Ross has very kindly offered to provide, if I don't intercept them and put my email address on everything so that I can have them all, which is a distinct possibility. But yeah, those will come out to you as well as a little thank you from Ross and myself for coming along to today's session. Really appreciate your time. That is it from us. So once again, thank you for your time and enjoy the rest of your day.